The manga begins with another nameless protagonist. It all begins with the goddess turning a person's soul into a spore and narrating that the number one kill of humanity throughout history is something known as a virus. The goddess finds it fascinating that someone wishes to become a virus, so she grants his wish by transforming him into one. This has to be a first. She then drops the spore into a deep forest. The spore lands on a rat's nose and slips inside, invading its nucleus and replicating mutated cells. Eventually, the spore takes over the entire body. The infected rat then gains consciousness, feels a bit of a headache, and wonders why he is outside. He also finds his point of view very strange and distorted. Then, the person now inhabiting the rat sees a puddle of water. Upon staring at his reflection, he is shocked to realize that he has become a rat. Confused and panicking, he wonders what is happening and how he ended up like this, as he clearly remembers being at work just moments ago. Suddenly, a plant root bursts from the ground, launching itself at a three-legged bird. Terrified, he quickly hides behind a tree and watches as the plant completely devours the bird. Knowing Earth doesn't have stuff like this, the MC controlling the rat and comes to the realization that he is in another world. He starts to remember his past life. He recalls working at his pharmaceutical company and staying late after everyone else had left to conduct personal research in the lab. He remembers nothing beyond that point, most likely killed by an experiment gone wrong, causing his death. Afterwards, he finds himself floating in a pure white space where a woman claiming to be the goddess appears. She spins some kind of roulette and informs him that in his next life, he will become a virus. Recalling this, the now rat person realizes that he hasn't reincarnated as a rat, but instead has reincarnated as a virus controlling the rat's body. However, being a researcher, he finds it ridiculous to believe in the goddess, but given what's been happening, it seems he has in fact been reincarnated. He finds it ironic and believes it's karma that he has reincarnated as a rat, the very animal that he's been performing experiments on. Accepting this new reality, he decides to explore what he is currently capable of and ponders what he should do next. Just then, he notices red particles coming out of his mouth and is surprised to see viruses with the naked eye. Realizing that these particles are part of himself, he wonders if he can take control of the rat's perspective as the virus. To test this, he begins intensely concentrating on the particles inside the rat's body and successfully shifts his viewpoint into that of the virus. Now in virus form, he observes his surroundings and realizes that he is inside the capillaries. Knowing it would be dangerous if any white blood cells detect a virus, he decides to leave the capillaries. Eventually, he comes across a cell wall and plans to use it, but just then he notices something unusual, a lump slowly forming on the cell wall. To his surprise, the lump turns into a copy of his current virus form. As more copies emerge from the cell membrane, he is both fascinated and disgusted at the same time. We're actually getting educated. Setting that aside, he approaches another virus cell and inquires if it can talk. However, the virus cell doesn't respond, which makes sense now that I think about. This leads him to conclude that he is the only virus with a will. Since he is the only virus with a will, he wonders if it is his role to command the massive number of virus cells. Though he doesn't know how to do it, he decides to give it a shot and command a nearby virus cell to follow him. In an instant, all the viruses gather around him, responding to his command. This shocks him as he didn't expect them to accumulate so quickly. With all the virus cells now following him, he realizes he can control them from a distance to a certain extent. However, further experimentation is needed, and he decides to leave that for later. He is still struggling to adapt to this new reality. Being a virus with awareness and collective thoughts doesn't make any sense to him. And even as a former researcher, he finds these new abilities as a virus difficult to comprehend. Then suddenly, he hears a voice in his head informing him of his current traits: infectivity, control, and duplication. At first, the virus is startled and questions who the announcer is. Then he wonders if the traits mentioned are his abilities, as he did indeed infect a rat, which aligns with the infectivity trait, and duplicate himself inside the rat, corresponding to the duplication trait. That leaves the control trait, which used to take control of the rat's body. Since there's no rule limiting him to only possessing a rat, he decides to find a new host with a stronger life force as soon as possible. The system-like announcer then informs him that because he has sufficiently infected the bush rat, he has acquired the conditions: cowardice, danger detection, and agility. Being a former researcher, he quickly realizes that these conditions, cowardice, danger detection, and agility, are actually the rat's ability. Writing them into his RNA means he has copied the rat's abilities simply by infecting it. Realizing he can copy the abilities of any creature he infects, the rat bursts into laughter, finding the situation fascinating and eagerly begins searching for a new host. As a former researcher, he has never seen an organism evolve at such a rapid speed in modern times. Depending on how this new ability is used, he could literally become the deadliest creature in history. While searching for a new host to verify the system's information, he stops near a flower and wonders if his abilities work on plants as well. Thus, he decides to give it a try and releases virus particles onto the flower. To his amazement, he successfully infects the plant and acquires the conditions: fever reducer and pain reliever. This confirms that his ability also works on plants. As he was thinking how useful the fever reducer and pain reliever conditions are, a strong gust of wind passes by, carrying the virus particles in its direction. The particles splatter onto the monstrous plant that he witnessed devouring a three-legged bird earlier. Since the monster plant came into contact with the virus particles, he wonders what kind of ability he will gain next. However, the system doesn't announce anything this time. So he takes a closer look at the monster plant and wonders if his infection potency isn't strong enough to let him acquire a skill immediately after gaining another one. As he's planning to do more research with the monster plant, it suddenly closes its mouth with a crushing force. Fortunately, he reacts just in time, jumping back and barely escaping the monster plant's jaws. This terrifies him, and he realizes that he is only a weak little rat right now. Still, he is certain that he has tremendous potential as a virus. He then recalls that viruses like smallpox spread across Earth more than 10,000 years ago. However, in this new world, he is most likely the origin of all viruses, which he finds incredible. On top of that, the irony isn't lost on him. A human who once made medicine to combat viruses has now reincarnated as one. For someone who is just getting fed up with his life anyway, this feels like the perfect twist. As a virus, he believes that if he continues to increase his abilities, he could one day become the main force of this world, maybe even causing a pandemic to control all of humanity. Now that is overpowered, but he isn't sure if humans even exist in this world and wonders if he should start searching for them. Then suddenly, his body starts trembling as his danger detection condition activates. He quickly looks around and notices water drops falling from above. When he looks up, he sees a wolf standing behind him, its eyes fixed on him, drooling at the sight of his next meal. Terrified, he tries to escape, but then his condition, cowardice, also activates, leaving him completely stunned. He desperately tries to move, wondering why his conditions have to activate at such a critical moment. Helpless, he watches in horror as the wolf creeps closer and takes the rat in one bite. In that moment, he believes his life as a virus has come to an end. Meanwhile, the goddess observes everything and refers to him as the one who chose the virus. Then she corrects herself, rephrasing it as the one who was chosen by the virus. The scene shifts to a research institute at night, where working hours have ended. As the last two researchers leave, they notice a man who has stayed behind in the lab, conducting an experiment. Curious, one of them asks the other what that person is doing in the lab. The other replies that the man claimed to be researching a new species of virus, finding it unusual for someone to work alone so late. She asks if it's really okay. The other researcher responds that he isn't sure, but prefers to leave it alone, as that person is terrible at socializing and no one knows what he's thinking, so it's best not to get involved. That socially awkward person is our MC, who now watches this flashback and wishes he didn't have to relive this unpleasant moment. Now that he is reincarnated, he wonders what he was doing and then recalls being eaten by a wolf along with a rat. This makes him really frustrated, as the moment he had reincarnated into something interesting, a virus, he lost his life again. Well, it is what it is, and he can't change it, but he still can't bear the thought of being reborn as a human again and repeating the same pointless cycle every day. No matter how much he would like to continue living as a virus, it seems inevitable, as his life as a virus has come to an end, but like hell, he'll let it end like this. That's the spirit. He quickly activates his infectivity and commands all his virus cells to use the capillaries to spread throughout the wolf's body. They're going to take it over. He also activates his trait duplication and orders the virus cells to use the wolf's blood cells to multiply further. By doing this, he plans to increase the number of virus cells in the wolf's body, making it easier to take control. Just then, the wolf reacts as the virus cells have sufficiently infected it. With this step complete, it's time to execute the next part of the improvised plan. He activates his trait control and begins concentrating all the virus cells at once. The system then notifies him that he has acquired the conditions: enhanced smell, endurance, and ferocity. As he starts to regain his vision, he notices his perspective is now from higher up than before, and he can smell blood in his mouth, which tastes weirdly satisfying. The reason he can feel all these sensations becomes clear. He has successfully taken over the wolf's body. He is really glad it worked out, as he hadn't expected it to, and he is still in disbelief that he was able to take control so easily. But setting that aside, this is a huge discovery, as this event proves that even if his host dies, as long as he can infect another creature, he won't die, which essentially makes him immortal. He finds the situation fascinating and starts running to find a new creature to experiment on. After running for a while, he hasn't encountered any other creatures yet, although he can smell them nearby. For some reason, none of them approach him, which might be because the wolf is so much higher up on the food chain. That makes sense, as he is radiating so much power that it doesn't even compare to when he was a rat. However, it's starting to get boring being a creature he has already seen in his past life. Even though there are some differences in appearance, in the end, it's still just a wolf. As he thinks about how it would have been more interesting if this world had unique creatures like dragons and goblins from fantasy stories, he suddenly notices small humanoid figures. Curious, he takes a closer look and realizes they are goblins. This surprises him, and he questions whether they're real, as they look almost exactly like the goblins in fantasy novels, though a bit smaller. This new discovery makes him wonder if this world resembles the fantasy worlds he read about in his previous life. Either way, goblins are still creatures, and although he never saw one in his past life, he is certain they could be infected as well. With that, he plans to infect them and rushes toward them. But he comes to an abrupt stop when he hears someone shouting about how persistent the goblins are. Hearing this, he wonders if it's what he thinks it is, so he decides to take a closer look to confirm and sees a girl wielding a sword. Tears fill her eyes as she declares that although she still has a long way to go, she is an adventurer and cannot afford to be defeated here. This surprises the virus, as he is certain that she is a human, and he hadn't expected to find one so soon. Suddenly, one of the goblins attacks her, and she barely manages to block it with her sword. As she fights the goblins, the virus analyzes the situation, and judging by her appearance and clothing, he concludes that this world's level of civilization is different from Earth's setting. That aside, the girl appears to be very exhausted. She's wearing light armor and wielding a worn-out sword, while the goblins seem to have more energy to spare than she does. He finds this situation ideal, as a human body is necessary. Now that he knows humans exist in this world, he can use one to gather information and conduct research. At first, he plans to infect the goblins and acquire conditions, and after that, he will infect the girl and take over her body. In addition, he plans to try something he's been wanting to do and combine the agility he gained from the rat with the ferocity he gained from the wolf. By doing this, he successfully makes the wolf inherit a mouse's agility, significantly increasing its speed. Now, with this evolved body, he rushes toward the goblins and notices that his body feels much lighter, and his battle nerves have eased up a lot, which is likely due to the effect of his condition ferocity. Exhausted, the girl can no longer hold on, and just as the goblins are about to land a finishing blow, the wolf leaps at them, biting one of the goblins and infecting it. This results in the virus acquiring the goblin's condition, short-tempered. The wolf then releases the goblin's corpse from its mouth, and since he can taste through the wolf's body, he finds the goblins taste unpleasant. Meanwhile, the girl is terrified, seeing a large gray wolf standing right in front of her. Seeing one of its kind killed, the goblin becomes enraged and leaps to attack the wolf. However, the wolf easily dodges the attack and swiftly gets behind the goblin. He finds it amazing to move so nimbly with this lightweight body, which is very different from his former life as a 30-year-old researcher. Catching the goblin off guard, he eliminates it with ease and acquires the condition, night vision, while the girl realizes that this is no ordinary gray wolf. The last remaining goblin who witnessed the fight becomes terrified and flees. The wolf notices this, and since it would be to chase after the goblin while risking the human's escape, he uses the infectivity trait on the fleeing goblin and acquires its condition, dexterity. With that taken care of, he shifts his focus to the girl and slowly approaches her. After getting close enough, he analyzes her state and learns that although she's exhausted, she doesn't seem to be seriously injured, making her an ideal candidate for his plans. However, he decides to hold back and think carefully, as there's still so much he doesn't know about this new world. In the worst-case scenario, if medicine has already been developed to combat his kind, he might be discovered and dealt with immediately if he infects a human. Thus, he resolves to avoid doing anything too suspicious until he gains more knowledge about this world. But he knows that with a human body, it would be perfect for gathering information, but taking one would also put his life at great risk. Confused by the wolf's behavior, the girl asks if it isn't going to eat her. And apparently he can understand her as he tries to tell her to wait because he's still deciding what to do, but since he's in the wolf's body, all that comes out is a woof. The girl is surprised and misinterprets this as a sign that the wolf means no harm and even came to save her. Without a second thought, she hugs the wolf and thanks it for rescuing her. Suddenly, being hugged out of nowhere startles the wolf, and he quickly jumps away. The girl then tries to reassure him by telling him not to be scared and to come closer to her. Watching her act so carelessly, the MC wonders what the heck is going on and who this naive creature could possibly be. She thanks the wolf again for saving her and addresses him as Mr. Wolf. Then she starts blabbering, explaining that she actually tried to avoid the goblins earlier, but thought she could handle them since she had just read a book on swordsmanship. However, it turns out to be much harder than she expected, and suddenly more goblins appear out of nowhere. This makes her wonder if people who are good at fighting simply assume they'll succeed when push comes to shove. Setting that aside, she expresses that she has learned a lot after watching his fight with the goblins. She wonders if, as a wolf living in the wild, it must be incredibly dangerous for him, and he must train every day to become so strong. She explains that while she didn't want to take the risk herself, she had no choice because she needed to earn money to afford tasty meals, something the wolf might not get to experience since he lives in the wild. She quickly clarifies that she doesn't mean to imply that what wolves eat tastes bad, though it might for humans. Here, hearing her talk nonstop, the wolf wonders how long she plans to keep talking to an animal of all things. He's confused by her behavior and also wonders if all humans in this world are like this. Setting that aside, he hopes to gather some information about this world from her, but she keeps rambling about unrelated things, which makes him bored, causing him to yawn. Seeing his reaction, the girl quickly apologizes after realizing that she got caught up in her own world while talking to him. Thus, she decided to start over and introduces herself as Elena, an adventurer, and thanks him again for saving her life. Finally, he got some useful information from her, as she refers to herself as an adventurer, something he recognizes from a fantasy novel he read in his previous life. He recalls that it's a job where people earn rewards by defeating monsters and collecting herbs. Since it's a very dangerous line of work, he wonders why this teenage girl is doing alone. Elena explains that she has been an adventurer for only 2 weeks, and in that time, she has realized she has no talent. That's why she struggles, even against low-ranking creatures like goblins. The wolf realizes he was wrong to think there's nothing challenging, as goblins turn out to be the lowest-ranked creatures, and since she couldn't defeat them, it means she's fairly weak. Elena then continues explaining that because she's so weak, no one in the Adventurers Guild wants to pair up with her, forcing her to take on quests solo. Hearing this, the wolf smirks evilly thinking that if the girl wants to become stronger, it will be an interesting experiment to see if he can strengthen her with his virus. Just then, Elena reaches out her hand and kisses him on the nose, saying that he's her very first adventurer partner and that it's been so long since she's talked to someone like this, which makes her very happy. Before she can say anything else, the wolf quickly jumps back, falling over in shock at how close she got. Our boy knows if it was Earth, he would have been in serious trouble or been accused of being a pervert. Elena notices it's already getting dark. She apologizes to the wolf, saying that she has to return to town because it's too dangerous to stay here at night. Though it pains her to leave so soon, it can't be helped. Hearing this, the wolf begins walking alongside her, deciding to escort her back to town, as he considers it his top priority to learn about the place she is living in. Realizing the wolf is accompanying her to town makes Elena very happy, and she compliments him by calling him a gentleman, which leaves him feeling a bit awkward. As they head towards Ward, the town, Elena continues her story, explaining that before becoming an adventurer, she used to work in the village fields. It was a small village where everyone lived peacefully, like family. However, one day, her village was attacked and destroyed by goblins. Though the village was left in ruins, everyone managed to survive, but they realized they might not be so lucky the next time the goblins came. So, they decided to move to a new land. Although she was complaining earlier about her lack of talent and how no one wants to pair up with her, she has no intention of giving up on becoming an adventurer. She's determined to become stronger and protect everyone in her village with her own power. She adds that while she might not look like it, she's confident in her skills from working in the fields. The wolf listens quietly to her story so far and realizes they are somewhat similar. In his previous life, he thought he was developing new medicine for the sake of people, but the more absorbed he became in his work, the more he was treated as an eccentric. This eventually led him to hate humans altogether. Unlike him, she remains positive and still has the desire to protect others, even though she also became an outcast in a similar way. They finally arrive near the town, and Elena points to it, informing the wolf that this is where she lives, a town called Fow. The wolf is visibly surprised at the sight of the town, and Elena remarks that it truly is a large place. Despite living here for a while, she admits she still can't remember the streets at all. The town is much bigger and more populated than the wolf had expected, with facilities he has never seen before, even in his previous life. Seeing all of this, he feels relieved that he chose to be cautious about infecting humans. As if he had, who knows what might have happened. Since they've reached their destination, Elena tells the wolf that while she would like to invite him to the inn to thank him, it might not be possible. Though he is new to this world, he understands that a monster can't just stroll into a town, so it's time for them to part ways. He gently reaches out his paw and taps her, trying to tell her it's okay and that she doesn't need to worry. Understanding his gesture, she bids him farewell, saying she won't forget his kindness and hopes they can meet again someday, to which the wolf responds with a soft woof. After waving for a while, she finally leaves, which makes him feel a bit lonely, as it's been a long time since he has been able to spend time with someone. Still, he believes it'll be fine, as they might meet again if she continues as an adventurer. With that thought, he decides to head back to the jungle, but abruptly stops, thinking about adventurers. His eyes brim with excitement as he wonders if he could try being one too. By becoming an adventurer, he could travel to various lands, take on jobs involving creatures, and further improve his abilities. However, he knows he can't become an adventurer in a wolf's body. For that, he needs a human body, one that is both functional and inconspicuous. Taking over the body of someone like Elena, who is very talkative, wouldn't work, as he doubts he could convincingly imitate her, and it would be bad if someone who knows her well saw through him. Instead, he wonders if he could control a corpse that has lost its identity. However, just thinking about it makes him feel uneasy, as not only because he would look like a zombie, but he also doesn't know if he could move a corpse properly. Just then, he notices a group of goblins right beside him, although he wants to try acquire some new conditions. He decides that figuring out what to do about a human body should be his top priority for now. While he acknowledges this, he also understands how difficult it might be to find a human body in the forest. However, as he thinks about humans while looking at the goblins, he realizes that goblins are humanoid monsters with a human-like body and a hood. He might be able to pass as human and sneak into town. Though risky, he believes it's worth giving a shot and decides to take over a goblin. But the problem is that he must get close to the goblins to infect one. And with 5 of them around, it would be really bad if they end up surrounding him. Just then, he notices one goblin that looks infected, which confuses him. But then he recalls that it's the goblin he infected and let go when he saved Elena. Since there's already an infected goblin, things are different now, as he doesn't have to engage in a battle to infect it. So he decides to quickly take over that goblin. But the issue is that he doesn't know how, as the first time he changed bodies was when the wolf ate him as a rat. Although he wonders if he should let the goblins eat him on purpose, his experience as a rat being eaten was so horrifying that he doesn't want to go through it again. But if there's no other way, he'll have to. Just then, he recalls that when he first regained consciousness as a virus, he successfully switched to the perspective of another virus by concentrating on it. It worked because the viruses are ultimately all parts of him. So he wonders if he can move his consciousness from here to another virus cell inside the infected goblin. He decides to give it a shot and begins intensely concentrating on the virus cell inside the infected goblin. As he focuses, the goblin starts to feel weak, sweating profusely, and coughing. Eventually, he successfully takes over the goblin's body and gasps, which catches the attention of the other goblins, and they all turn to look at him. When he was in the wolf's body, he thought nothing of goblins, but now, at eye level, he finds them terrifying. Suddenly, one goblin approaches and calls out to him. Panicking, he wonders if he did something strange. The goblin then offers to help carry his bag, and he quickly accepts, handing it over while thanking the goblin. This interaction surprises him, making him wonder if he has completely taken over the goblin's mind, as despite its primitive nature, he can understand their speech. Then another goblin talks to him, sympathizing with him as it mentions being attacked by a wolf before the virus took control. Then a female goblin approaches and gives him a herb, saying it will calm his mind. Unsure how to respond, he simply takes the herb and starts chewing it. Seeing this, the female goblin tells him not to overdo it. These interactions surprise him, as he didn't expect goblins to be this kind. Setting that aside, he wonders what happened to the wolf he was controlling. So he looks behind the bush to see the wolf, which appears to be very confused. Seeing this, he wonders if the wolf's original consciousness regained control after he left. Suddenly, the wolf turns its head towards him, and the moment their eyes meet, the wolf starts growling and smirks menacingly. Alarmed, he quickly warns the other goblins, but the wolf is already too close as they all start running. He realizes they can't escape with these goblin legs, so he comes up with an idea, following which he uses his infectivity trait to infect the goblins. Once the required conditions are met, he was able to give them the conditions, stamina, and agility. With these new conditions enhancing their speed, they climb to a higher ground where the wolf can't reach them, thus escaping it. Now that they're safe, the goblins begin celebrating, taunting the wolf by saying that they're faster than it, when in truth, it's all thanks to the virus. Setting that aside, he's relieved his plan worked, and in doing so, he makes a significant discovery that he can share conditions by infecting others, which could have various uses. For now, he decides to follow these goblins, as it might be interesting, and he's also getting used to this body. Then the goblins announce that they're heading back to their den, still full of energy, which is again all thanks to him. Later, they arrive in front of a cave guarded by 2 goblins with spears. As they enter the cave, the guard goblins salute them, prompting the virus to awkwardly salute back. Although he is surprised that the goblins are smart enough to make a cave their den, he finds the environment appalling, as nearly all of them are wearing only a single loincloth and are skin and bones. While he analyzes the surroundings, the female goblin reminds everyone that the boss will be angry because there is so little food. As he wonders who this boss is, they proceed to a giant goblin addressed as Lord Hobgoblin, who is furious because they are so late. The virus is shocked upon seeing the hobgoblin, and while helping the other goblins take food out of the bag, he examines the hobgoblin more carefully. Although it resembles a goblin, its size is that of a giant human man. This makes the virus wonder if this is what an evolved goblin looks like, a hobgoblin. Once the goblins finishes taking out the food, the hobgoblin asks if that's all they brought. One of the goblins replies affirmatively, explaining that the orcs stole all their prey, leaving nothing behind. Quietly observing this interaction, the virus notices how similar the hobgoblin's movements and body structure are to a human. Since this is exactly the type of body he's been searching for, he decides to take over the hobgoblin. Although blending in a town with such a body won't draw much attention, he knows he'll need to address the issue of its green skin and find appropriate clothes. Setting aside the appearance problem, he concludes that the hobgoblin's body is the closest to human he can find in the jungle, and it clearly has stronger vitality than the goblins. Enraged, the hobgoblin kicks the goblin in the face, declaring that they're all alive because of him. He stomps on the goblin while demanding more food and calling it useless. The virus then comes up with a plan and yells at the hobgoblin, telling him to find the food he wants to eat himself. Hearing this, the hobgoblin angrily asks the virus what he just said. Now that the hobgoblin has taken the bit and is fairly close, he decides to push it further, loudly telling the hobgoblin that he is nothing but a block-headed baby who lounges on his throne and begs for food. The reason he is trying to lure the hobgoblin closer is that he has mixed virus particles into his breath, and by shouting, he aims to infect the hobgoblin, which actually worked. However, the system then informs him that the hobgoblin has virus resistance, so the infection will take time to complete. While he is shocked to learn about the virus resistance, the hobgoblin grabs him by the head, saying that he has some nerve going against his lord. Unsure how long the infection will take, the virus decides to struggle in the hobgoblin's grip until it does. The hobgoblin then announces that because the orcs have ruined the land, he no longer needs the goblins and will leave the area on his own. Just then, the system informs the virus that the duplication trait is commencing on the target's body. As the hobgoblin smirks, declaring that all the goblins will get eaten by orcs, the system confirms that the hobgoblin's body has been taken over. The virus then responds to the hobgoblin, stating that before they get eaten by the orcs, he will eat him. At that moment, the hobgoblin lets go of the goblin's body as the other goblins panic and call out to their lord. The virus, who is now in control of the hobgoblin, smiles brightly at them. He then says that everything he had been saying was what he thought until now. But starting today, he changes his mind and considers them his friends, so they should all get along. The system then informs him that he has received the conditions: brute strength, patience, and claws. This amazes him, as they all seem incredibly useful in battle, which is to be expected since they come from the leader of the goblins. Just then, his celebration is abruptly cut short when the goblin guarding the cave rushes in and announces that the enemies are right outside. It turns out to be a group of orcs who are demanding that this land belongs to them and orders the goblins to leave immediately. The virus, who is now a hobgoblin, then comes out of the cave with a sword, accompanied by all the goblins, including some injured ones. Although they're fairly armed, they're still trembling in fear at the sight of the orcs. Despite this, he initially thought that they might have a chance. However, after seeing the sheer size and number of the orcs, he feels overwhelmed. He begins to understand why the hobgoblin lord planned to abandon the goblins, as he would have done the same in this situation, because there's no way they can win against the orcs with such weak and injured goblins. However, he has no intention of running, as his infection ability allows him not only to enhance himself, but also to grant conditions to others, something he discovered while escaping the wolf as a goblin. This situation is also an ideal opportunity to test out various conditions, and in the worst-case scenario, he can use his agility condition to escape. With this plan in mind, his only concern is that the goblins are too terrified to fight effectively, even with conditions making them stronger. As their leader, he decides to inspire them with a motivational speech. So he mixes virus particles into his breath again and then loudly urges the goblins not to be afraid. He tells them to protect their home with everything they have, emphasizing that they must overcome their fear, as they are stronger than they think and should give him their full support. As the virus spreads among them, he begins the process of granting them the conditions: stamina, agility, brute strength, and claws. These are the only conditions he can transfer at the moment. As the conditions take effect, he notices changes in their bodies, and to his shock, all the goblins have evolved into something like hobgoblins. This transformation is far more dramatic than he anticipated, and he wonders if the brute strength condition caused it. However, he worries that they might become suspicious of this sudden change. To his relief, the goblins believe their evolution is due to the hobgoblin lord's inspiring speech, which they think has physically strengthened them. He is really glad that they are such simpletons, and now that this matter is settled, he decides to proceed with his first large-scale experiment. Seeing the sudden changes in the goblins, the orcs grow confused about what has happened. They wonder if the goblins are using some kind of body-strengthening magic. However, they believe goblins aren't smart enough to do something like that. The virus feels confident about going against the orcs, as not only are the goblins' individual strengths now equal to the orcs, but they also completely outnumber them. Suddenly, the system informs the virus that it has discovered several new conditions, which are covert evasion, fatigue, starvation, and exhaustion. As he is surprised by how many conditions he has acquired just from infecting all the goblins, he begins to gain even more: hunger, anemia, nimble, good walker, and insight. Additionally, his existing conditions, short temper, night vision, and dexterity, level up to 2. Since he hasn't actively used these conditions for them to improve, he wonders if acquiring duplicates of the same conditions causes them to merge and strengthen. This realization excites him, as it means he can gain even more powerful conditions by infecting the orcs. Confident, he provokes the orcs, mocking them by asking what happened to all their hype and whether they are now scared like pigs. Enraged, one of the orcs charges at him, yelling that despite the goblins looking different, they are still goblins and can never match the orcs. The hobgoblin then lifts his sword high and slams it down on the attacking orc, eliminating it in a single strike. This astonishes the goblins, who realize their lord is far stronger than usual today, and even the orcs notice that he is unusually fast. In truth, the virus was unsure if he could even wield the sword properly, but thanks to his level 2 dexterity condition, he can handle it pretty well, and although he knows that he should be scared, for some reason, he feels fired up. Then more orcs rush to attack him, but he eliminates them effortlessly with a single slash, while also infecting them. With each infection, he acquires new conditions: tenacity, strong arm, willpower, pain suppression, and frenzy. Realizing he has gained a ton of amazing conditions from just a few orcs, he understands that orcs are much higher on the food chain than goblins. However, thanks to the conditions he gave to the goblins, defeating them will now be extremely difficult. He then infects more orcs and gains even more conditions like body manipulation, fatigue recovery, and tonic. Meanwhile, the orc lord realizes that they are outnumbered by the abnormally strong goblins, so he quickly orders his subordinate to bring out what they captured yesterday. The subordinate hesitates, explaining that the captive isn't fully trained yet and could cause collateral damage, but the orc lord, unwilling to admit defeat to goblins, angrily commands him to release it anyway. Just then, an orc catches a goblin off guard and is about to land a finishing blow, but before it can strike, the conditions fatigue and anemia activate, causing the orc to stagger. This gives the goblin enough time to eliminate it. The virus just now discovers that he can activate negative conditions on infected monsters, which is a huge breakthrough, and it's all thanks to the orcs. However, right now, he's starting to feel like a god punishing the orcs for their greed. Despite this, he feels somewhat bad for them and believes it's unfair to drag out the battle when the outcome is already decided, so he decides to end it immediately. Then suddenly, a loud thunderclap echoes, sending shivers down his spine. Startled, he quickly turns around, wondering what just happened, as he hears thunder despite the sky lacking enough clouds to produce it. He then notices something large slowly approaching, and as it gets closer, he is shocked to see an orc holding a chain leash attached to a massive bear with horns surrounded by crackling electricity. Terrified, a goblin quickly identifies the creature as an electric bear. Hearing this, the virus wonders if it's called that because it can harness the power of electric current. The orc then orders the electric bear to attack the goblins, declaring that they are its prey. However, in response, the bear glares at the orc as its horns begin to spark with increasing electricity. Then the bear strikes the orc with a powerful thunderbolt, reducing it to ashes. The virus is shocked by the sheer destructive power of the bear's electricity and realizes that the orcs haven't trained it at all. This makes him wonder just how far the orcs are willing to go to avoid losing to the goblins, as they must have known that bringing this creature here would cause massive collateral damage. One of the goblins then suggests they run away, as there's no way they can defeat the electric bear, the strongest being in the area. However, the virus has no intention of retreating, as he doesn't believe that he'll lose, and he finds the bear's electrical abilities incredibly fascinating. So there's no way he'll let an opportunity like this slip away. Although he agrees that the bear looks extremely powerful, he is confident he can infect it, but still, he decides to be cautious, as it might take time to infect the bear, just like it did with the hobgoblin lord. He then borrows a spear from a goblin and cuts his own hand, coating the weapon with his blood, which is infused with the virus. The reason he's doing this is because getting close to the bear would be too dangerous, especially after witnessing an orc reduced to ashes by its electricity. So he plans to throw the virus-coated spear at the bear from a safe distance, hoping to pierce its skin and infect it. With his plan in place, he throws the spear at the electric bear. However, to his shock, the spear is repelled by the bear's fur, which is far tougher than he expected. However, his attempt isn't entirely fruitless, as despite the spear failing to pierce the bear's skin and deliver the virus cells, he gains two conditions: lightning resistance and blade-proof fur. He hypothesizes that while the spear didn't pierce the bear, some of his blood might have splashed into the bear's eye, allowing him to obtain these conditions. If that's the case, he wonders if he can send his conscience into the virus inside the bear's body. However, when he focuses and tries to connect with the virus cells, it doesn't work. He realizes that there aren't enough virus cells inside the bear for him to transfer his consciousness. As he ponders the issue, he notices the electric currents bouncing between the bear's horns and body. This leads him to suspect that the continuous electric generation might be destroying the virus cells inside the bear's body. Just then, the bear stands up, charging its electricity to prepare an attack. Seeing this, the virus quickly prepares to block it. When the bear unleashes its powerful current, he narrowly avoids serious damage thanks to his newly acquired lightning resistance condition. Unfortunately, the goblins beside him, lacking any such resistance, are reduced to ashes. The bear doesn't stop there, as it releases another electric attack, reducing even more goblins to ashes. Seeing this, the goblins retreat to a safer distance, and the virus realizes he can't do anything with the current conditions at his disposal. He admits to himself that he was too overconfident in his power and needs to run, as he can't afford to lose the hobgoblin's body. Just then, he notices the bear charging its electric power again to attack the goblins, who are too panicked to get away. He decides to take advantage of the situation and use the goblins as a decoy while he escapes. But as he looks at the goblins about to be reduced to ashes, he just can't do it. The bear finishes charging its electricity, and as it prepares to strike the goblins with thunder, the virus quickly tackles the bear, trying to push it away with all his strength. He feels disbelief as he realizes he let his emotions get the better of him and caused him to do something so illogical. Struggling to hold back the bear, he notices the goblins calling out his name in worry. Suddenly, the bear bites his hand with such crushing force that it renders his hand completely useless. However, he isn't too worried about it. In fact, it's somewhat going according to his plan. Earlier, when he tried to infect the bear through its skin, the virus cells were immediately eliminated by the electric current. However, some virus cells managed to invade the bear's body through its eyes, which allowed him to acquire two new conditions. This makes the possibility of infecting the bear clear, since the electricity is only on the surface of its body and not inside. He can directly funnel blood into the bear through its mouth, and the plan actually worked. As the moment the bear swallows the blood from his injured hand, the virus cells infect it from the inside. Now that the bear is infected, he wastes no time and begins activating as many negative conditions as possible, including anemia, hunger, fatigue, starvation, and exhaustion. As the negative conditions take effect, he acquires new ones: electrocution, electric absorption, and shock resistance. With the bear weakened by negative conditions, he activates several conditions to buff himself. These conditions include claws, body manipulation, blade-proof fur, and strong arms. Using this combination, his hand begins transforming into a claw similar to the bear's. Now that it's his turn to strike, he focuses all his strength into his claw and swiftly slaps the bear, eliminating it in a single blow, and gains the conditions magic generation, electromagnetic release, and agitation. He feels relieved that he wasn't actually overconfident and is indeed strong enough to defeat the bear. However, using so many conditions at once, combined with the intensity of the fight, takes a heavy toll on the hobgoblin's body. This causes him to stagger, and he eventually collapses, leaving the goblins both worried and surprised by his now fluffy claw. A few days later, the goblins bring him plenty of food and cheerfully tell him to take a look at how much prey they've caught. It has been 3 days since his fight with the electric bear, and during this time, he has been living with the goblins to heal. The atmosphere is lively, and everyone seems happy. As with the orcs gone, the goblins no longer worry about being hunted and find it easier to gather food. The injuries he sustained during the fight with the bear were severe, fatal enough to prevent a normal being from surviving. However, since he isn't normal, he manages a complete recovery using his healing and vitality conditions. The reason the goblins appear to be back to their original state is that he temporarily removed their conditions, ensuring no humans notice they are mutant goblins and send someone to deal with them. 2 goblins then offer him a fruit they think is tasty. He politely responds that he's fine and they should eat it instead. The goblins cheerfully reply that they love him and insist they brought the fruit just for him to eat. Sitting with the goblins, surrounded by their joy, he feels happy, as it's the first time he's been liked by so many, even if they are goblins. This makes him think that staying here a little longer as their leader might not be so bad. Then a goblin approaches him with something strange and hands it to him. As he examines the object, he recalls his original goal. Although he enjoys his time here, he realizes that as a virus, he wants to explore how far he can go. The object the goblin gave him is a mask, and he wonders if it might allow him to enter a human town unnoticed. A few days later, as he decides to leave and begins putting on the clothes the goblins found for him, they worriedly ask if he is really going. He replies affirmatively and apologizes for leaving so abruptly. As he finishes dressing, he finds the clothes in this world very uncomfortable and odd to wear, but assumes they must be the norm here. He then tells the goblins that during his battle with the bear, he realized he isn't strong enough and has decided to embark on a journey to become stronger. The goblins start crying and protest that he is already strong enough to protect them, begging him not to abandon them. He replies that it's a hard decision for him to leave them too, but it can't be helped. He never expected to grow so attached to something like goblins. It almost feels like the love of a loyal pet dog or something similar. Then the female goblin, with tears in her eyes, offers him the electric bear's fur, which is very durable, warm, and useful in many ways. Seeing the goblins crying and sobbing, he can't bear it anymore and tries to cheer them up. He assures them that they are plenty strong, reminding them how they fought on the same level with the orcs. And because they are strong enough to protect the nest, he feels confident in leaving on this journey to become even stronger. Thus, he asks them to protect the nest for him and promises that he will definitely return. Hearing this, the goblins glance at each other and then back at him. Motivated by his promise to return, they assure him that they will protect his nest and tell him to go on his journey without worrying about them. With that settled, he finally leaves for the town with peace of mind, knowing there are no more orcs left in the area. Before departing, he gives the goblins additional helpful conditions to protect themselves, but only to the extent that it won't draw suspicion from humans. As the goblins loudly wish him good luck on his journey and bid him farewell, he resolves to check on them if he ever passes by this area again, as he plans to visit the town of Fow, the place Elena told him about. He realizes that even if he runs into her again, she wouldn't recognize him. After all, he looks completely different from when he was a wolf. However, he holds on to hope, believing that if he becomes an adventurer like her, there might be a chance to talk to her again. Thinking about becoming an adventurer, he quickly checks his appearance again, wondering if he looks human enough and isn't too suspicious. Fortunately, he has managed to cover all of the goblin's unique green skin and has been practicing speaking for the past few days. But he is still unsure whether his speech is difficult to understand or if a hobgoblin can even converse properly with humans. As these thoughts swirl in his mind, he notices how nervous he is about entering a human town. He realizes that his nervousness could lead to mistakes that might expose him. But it can't be helped, as he needs to confirm whether his disguise is enough to pass without suspicion. The problem is, he doesn't know how to test it. Just then, a distant growling noise catches his attention. Following the sound, he comes across a carriage surrounded by wolves, while a group of knights struggles to protect it. As he observes the situation, he sees the knights overwhelmed by the seemingly endless number of wolves appearing from nowhere. As a knight struggles against a wolf, the virus comes to the rescue and eliminates it using the condition covert. Startled by his sudden arrival, the knight asks who he is and when he got there. The virus then awkwardly responds with a poorly pronounced hello. The knights are very confused by his speech and ask if he meant to say hello. Hearing this, the virus is very happy and relieved, as it means they understand him. He explained that he has come to save them, and the knights question whether it's true, to which he replies affirmatively. Since they aren't attacking him, he assumes they haven't realized he's a goblin, which makes him feel greatly relieved. However, the knights mistake his poor pronunciation for fear and assume he isn't capable of fighting. As a result, they advise him to quickly get behind them for safety. Just then, as a wolf is about to attack him from behind, a knight quickly warns him to watch out. Heeding the knight's warning, he swiftly blocks the wolf's attack with his hand. Annoyed that the wolf interrupted his conversation, he slams it into the ground, eliminating it instantly. The knights stare in shock at his strength, while someone inside the carriage watches the scene unfold quietly. Then, more wolves notice the virus and rush toward him, and he quickly realizes that if his clothes rip, his green skin might be exposed. To avoid this, he plans to infect the wolves and apply negative conditions to take them down quickly. As he spreads the virus particle into the air to infect the wolves, the knights decide to step forward to help. Before he can stop them, the virus enters their bodies, successfully infecting them. This results in him receiving the conditions parry reflexes, dynamic vision, and desertion. He is shocked that this happened, as he never even imagined something like this could occur. He then starts to panic, wondering what to do now, as he knows nothing about this world's medicine. Yet, he has accidentally infected a human. This could be the beginning of humans learning about him, and they might even develop a vaccine that could completely wipe him out. Just thinking about this terrifies him so much that he unconsciously begins swinging his sword while wondering what he's going to do next. This frightens the wolves so much that they flee, which impresses the knights who praise his battle against them. Since he has displayed such inhuman strength, the knights believe him to be some famous swordsman, so they request the honor of seeing his face and knowing his name. This makes him incredibly nervous, and before he can say anything, his attention shifts to a creaking sound coming from the carriage. Suddenly, the carriage door bursts open, and a man wearing a hat steps out. He greets the virus and expresses his gratitude, saying that who knows what would have happened if he hadn't been there earlier. The virus had assumed the carriage was empty since no one had come out to help or even see what was happening, but now he realizes someone was inside all along, but wonders who this person is. Then, a knight addresses the man as Master Roy and asks if he is hurt, to which Roy replies that he is fine and that the carriage also seems to be undamaged thanks to everyone's efforts in defending it. Later, the virus enters the carriage together with Roy and slowly heads toward the town of Fao, while the knights guard the carriage by walking beside it. Roy thanks the virus again, expressing how lucky they are to have run into him, and then introduces himself as Royard, a merchant who works for the Valkyrie Company. He explains that the scent of the specially ordered meat they were transporting to the town must have attracted the wolves. On top of that, the soldiers were already exhausted from the long journey up until now. While Roy continues talking, the virus is surprised to meet a merchant, and judging by his appearance, business must be going really well, as he is traveling a nice carriage and wearing high-quality clothes. He finds this encounter very lucky, since he is currently dead broke, so he might receive a reward for rescuing them once they arrive in town. Roy then comments that even if the knights retired, he finds it really disappointing that they lost to the wolves, to which the virus awkwardly agrees. Roy then compliments him, saying that compared to the knights, his fight against the wolves was truly incredible. He isn't even sugarcoating it, as he has seen many adventurers fight, but never before has he witnessed someone like the virus. He also admires how fearless the virus was, not reckless savagery, but overwhelming confidence backed by skill. On top of that, he doesn't even seem tired, which really captivates Roy. The virus is overjoyed to hear these compliments and finds Roy refreshing, as he praises him without sarcasm, unlike typical rich people. But Roy doesn't stop there, as he continues saying that the way the virus fought was almost as if he wasn't afraid of death. This startles the virus for a moment, and he just hopes Roy is joking. Still, he is a virus, so he won't disappear as long as he isn't eradicated by some kind of medicine. Thinking about medicine, he suddenly remembers that he needs to gather information about this world's medical system. He decides to casually bring up the subject, starting by mentioning that he has noticed a lot of people getting sick recently. He then asks Roy if he's doing well. Roy replies that he is fine, but agrees that many people have fallen sick lately. He explains that it's due to a cloud of miasma approaching the city. Not only that, but it also seems that many people have recently found a crystal with strong mana, which has led to cases of mineral poisoning. This information surprises the MC, as it is his first time hearing about miasma or mineral sickness. He wonders what they are, since these could be illnesses unique to this world. He decides to go along with the conversation, adding that along with those illnesses, there are also viruses. Confused, Roy repeats the word virus and then asks what it is, as he has never heard of it before, so he apologizes for his lack of knowledge on the subject. This really surprises the virus, and he wonders if Roy truly doesn't know about viruses, as he is a merchant who is supposed to be aware of these things for his business. This means that either viruses haven't been discovered yet, or he's the only virus that exists in this world. But since he just mentioned the word virus, he quickly gives a false explanation, saying that viruses are crystals recently discovered. Roy easily believes this information, though he does find the name a bit strange. The virus is glad he managed to deceive him, and since viruses haven't been discovered in this world, or perhaps don't exist, he can infect anyone like an all-you-can-infect buffet. Still, he decides to be very careful, as those soldiers were quite skilled, which is evident from the valuable conditions he acquired from them. Though he already infected them once, it was accidental, so there might not have been enough virus cells in them to gain all the conditions. Thinking it would be useful to get more, he increases the density of his virus cells. As a result, he acquires the condition combat instincts, evasion, composure, and intuition. While he finds these conditions very versatile, the system continues informing him that he has also acquired lurking, deception, cunning, and drug resistance. This shocks the virus, and he finds these conditions particularly disturbing. He asks Roy if the soldiers are his subordinates, to which Roy replies that aside from the coachman, none of them are company employees. Instead, they are mercenaries he hired to escort him safely through the jungle. Roy finds it very amusing that although he hired them for protection, in the end, they were all saved by someone else, which makes him wonder why he even hired them in the first place. While he finds the mercenaries very suspicious, the system informs him that it has discovered even more conditions: presence of mind, negotiation, persuasion, and plation. This confuses the virus, as these aren't typical mercenary-like conditions. He wonders where they came from, but then he realizes that because the window was open, Roy also got infected. This makes him realize that spreading the virus in a small space isn't a good idea at all. However, it can't be helped, and he hopes he won't get into trouble because of this. Still, it's not all bad, as Roy's merchant-likey conditions will be very useful when he starts living in the town setting. That aside, the virus speculates that judging by Roy's conditions, he must be a highly skilled merchant. That means he might be targeted by a rival merchant, and considering the mercenaries have those disturbing conditions, they could have been hired to eliminate Roy, though it's just speculation. If that were to happen and he saved Roy's life again, he might get double the reward. That would mean securing his research and living expenses right here and now. With this in mind, he tells Roy that he finds the mercenaries very suspicious. However, Roy doesn't hear him and instead tells the virus to look outside, as they have arrived in the town of Fow. Although he guesses the virus might have already been here, he decides to introduce it anyway and informs him that this is the town of Fow. They then get out of the carriage, where Roy tells him to wait for a while, as his contract with the mercenaries ends here, so he has to take care of some formalities. Seeing the mercenaries being dismissed, the virus wonders if his suspicion that they were targeting Roy was really unfounded. After the mercenaries leave, Roy thanks him for waiting. Since he owes a large debt for the virus saving his life, he decides to offer him something. This makes the virus very excited, and he wonders if it is money. He is sure that it is money. However, instead, Roy gives him a card, explaining that this is a Valkyrie company card, which is only given to certain special individuals. The virus is disappointed, since it isn't what he expected, but he still finds the card very pretty. Roy then explains that he can use this card to get discounts on any of Valkyrie Company's products, and he can also show this card if he ever needs something from Roy. Learning this, the virus realizes that it's some sort of convenience card, which he finds very useful since he doesn't have any connections in this world, as having a supporter is more valuable than money right now. He then informs Roy that this is his first time in this city, and he doesn't know anyone, so he requests Roy's help in the future if he ever gets into trouble. Roy happily accepts his request and assures him that he will rush over any time if his savior needs something. Although the virus feels a little bad about using such a nice guy, it can't be helped as a merchant's connections will be very useful, so he plans to take as much advantage as he can. Thus, he uses his infectivity trait to increase virus cells in Roy's body, resulting in him acquiring more conditions. As he excitedly waits for the system to reveal the conditions, it informs him that they are assassination, soundproof, invisibility, secrecy level 2, presence detection, presence concealment level 2, shadow magic aptitude, and acting. These conditions are so disturbing that he is left shocked and trembling. Then Roy takes a gold pouch from his assistant and decides to give it to the virus as his gratitude. However, the virus quickly declines, giving the excuse that he can't accept money for good deeds. He then apologizes, saying he just remembered something very important and has to leave. Without hesitation, he runs for it, as he just realized that he had let his guard down the entire time, and the disturbing conditions he got in the carriage weren't from the mercenaries. Instead, they were from Roy. If he wants to live a quiet life and continue his research, he can't get involved with Roy any further. This confuses Roy, as the virus had just told him earlier that this was his first time in town and that he didn't know anyone. So what urgent business could he possibly have here? Thinking carefully, he wonders if the virus sensed something and fled because of it. However, he decides not to dwell on it too much. After all, the virus seems to have secrets of his own that he doesn't want to share. Since they are somewhat similar, he thinks they'll get along, and he especially looks forward to doing business with the virus in the future. Later, after mindlessly running around for a while, he stops in an alleyway to catch his breath. He believes it was the right decision to run as soon as he figured out that Roy is something like an assassin, but now he wonders if it was really necessary, since he has already infected Roy, meaning he will definitely be stronger if they were to fight. Still, it can't be helped. It's his first time seeing an assassin in person, so it's natural for him to be freaked out. Setting that aside, after running for so long, he feels exhausted and decides to check out the town to find a place to rest. Though he expected it, since this is another world, he still can't help but feel amazed by the many different species of people in this town. Just as he starts getting excited, wondering what kind of conditions he will receive, someone yells from behind, calling out to him. As he turns around, he sees a hobbit-like person who informs him that he can't stand in front of their 3-star hotel in such dirty attire. Learning that this is a hotel, he inquires if he can stay there, to which the hobbit-like person awkwardly laughs and bluntly replies that they have no rooms available for someone as suspicious-looking as him. Damn. Since he can't stay there, he goes to another hotel and asks the cat person standing at the entrance if he can stay. The cat person also awkwardly laughs and bluntly replies that he seems a bit shady, so they can't allow it. Damn. He then tries another hotel, where an old elf man tells him that he smells like a ditch and looks like a murderer, which isn't his concern, but he still can't stay there if he doesn't have money. Receiving this awful treatment on his first day in town makes him want to return to the goblin's nest. He then tells the old man that although he doesn't have money, he has some items he can sell. The old man quickly yells that they only take cash. Feeling awful, he realizes that the human world really isn't such a decent place after all. Then the old man informs him that he can sell items at the Adventurers Guild for some cash. While he's surprised to hear about the Adventurers Guild, the old man adds that it would be a pain later if rumors spread that he let someone stay for free. However, if he makes even a small amount of money from a guild, he can stay, even if he's short on funds. Hearing this, he realizes that there are some good people here too. Later, he arrives in front of the Adventurers Guild building. As he enters, he wonders if it will be like an office building, but that turns out not to be the case. It looks more like a bar on a Friday night. He finds this to be a brilliant business idea, since adventurers who just got paid are likely to spend their money here right away. Seeing the large crowd, he realizes that if he were to spread his virus now, he could acquire a bunch of conditions. However, he decides to play it safe and avoid making any big moves until he knows the town better. As he walks inside, looking for a place to cash in the items he has, he notices that everyone is staring at him. This makes him realize that his appearance really stands out. Since it can't be helped, he decides to quickly sell the electric bear's fur and leave quietly without drawing any more attention. Just then, he notices a pretty woman waving at him from behind a desk, making him wonder if she is a receptionist. He quickly approaches and greets her awkwardly, to which she responds with a greeting of her own and asks if he is new here. When he replies affirmatively, the woman slides a paper across the table and informs him that this is the adventurer registration form. Her speedy recruitment attempt surprises him, and he quickly explains that he is from a remote countryside and doesn't have an ID or anything. She reassures him that it's fine, since the Adventurers Guild operates entirely on a merit system. They welcome anyone, even those in similar situations to his, and they're always short on manpower, so it isn't an issue. She then offers to assist him in filling out the registration form and asks for his name. He considers giving his real name, but since this is his new life, he decides to create a new one and introduces himself as Walker Parasite. Walker comes from translating his previous name into English, while parasite, he believes, is the French word for parasite, which is the most incredible thing I've heard in a while. He feels like it suits him even though he isn't actually a parasite. Once they finish the registration, the receptionist hands him his name tag and a grade 6 adventurer card, which functions as a rank verification. She informs him that if he ranks up to grade 4, he'll be able to use it as an official ID everywhere, making it very useful. Taking the card and name tag, he analyzes it and finds it similar to dog tags from his previous world. The receptionist then mentions that starting out solo is difficult, but since he looks well built, she is sure he will quickly be able to form a party, as he comes across as a rookie with a lot of potential. Since this seems to be his first time adventuring, she decides to help him pick a quest. She suggests the F-rank medical herb collection quest or the E-rank horned rabbit subjugation quest. Before she can suggest more, he interrupts and takes out the electric bear's fur, asking if he can sell it here. This really surprises her, that he managed to harvest something before even becoming an adventurer. But as she takes a closer look at the fur, she is left in utter shock, as this is the S-rank electric bear from a subjugation request that was just issued. Since she says this out loud, it catches the attention of everyone in the guild hall, and they start chatting about the electric bear. The receptionist woman then asks the virus, who we will all know now as Walker, how he obtained the electric bear's fur. He replies that he defeated it and asks if there is a problem. Upon learning that the electric bear was a monster meant to be subjugated, he realizes it must be a big deal, and now that he has openly declared defeating it, he has drawn a lot of unnecessary attention. The receptionist woman then informs him that there isn't a problem, but considering how incredibly strong an electric monster is, it's hard to believe someone took it down alone. Walker quickly apologizes, clarifying that he was just showing off, and in truth, he took down the monster with a team of 20 people, which is technically true since there were 20 goblins. He also adds that it was so difficult that many people died, but they somehow managed, which is to be expected from a promising rookie like him. Though his story is somewhat convincing, the receptionist woman still finds it hard to believe, but decides to go along with it. She then informs him that as long as he completes the quests, the guild staff won't pry for details. Since he has brought proof of the electric bear's subjugation, she takes out a gold pouch and hands it to him as the reward. As everyone in the guild is intensely staring at him, he quickly takes the pouch and puts it in his pocket. He feels relieved that he was finally able to get some cash. Now, with that settled, he decides to leave quickly since he isn't great at interacting with people, and on top of that, he is standing out in a bad way. Though he's glad they didn't pry for more details, he realizes that this guild is a dangerous place, since they accept just anyone, possibly even criminals. He also suspects that although the receptionist woman looks nice and normal, she's probably very skilled, as she has a few scratches here and there. Not only that, but he can also tell even through her clothes that she trains very hard. Since it seems like he might get some useful conditions from her, he is considering infecting her right now. While he is lost in thought, he doesn't notice that his face is accidentally angled toward her chest. As she awkwardly clears her throat, he quickly realizes this and tries to clarify that he wasn't looking at that. She then requests him to move aside, as the next person is waiting in line. This makes him feel very awkward, and as he turns to inform the next person that he is done, he is surprised to see that the person waiting is Elena.